Talk to Your Daughter is a brilliant episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. It takes a really heavy question and makes it so funny. And I'm not surprised because the show is generally rather fantastic. This is the 19th episode of season 6 of Everybody Loves Raymond. It's directed by Jerry Zaks, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it starts off with Debra coming home. Ray calls her a cute name, as he often does, and the guys are questioning how far he can push this, because Ray does call her quite bizarre things, and Debra doesn't mind. So they encourage Ray to call her some other names in a cutesy voice to see how far he can take it. And what I love about this is that I do this. I do this with my cat. Ray calls Debra the first thing that comes into his head, and I do the same with my cat. I call her some ridiculous things, but in a cutesy voice, and, well, I get away with it, and I think it does come from Ray. I think I have picked that up from way back when I used to watch the show decades ago at this point. So this is something that I love, and he decides to call her a couple of names, and she doesn't pay attention. Part of me thinks that she doesn't really hear what name he's calling her half of the time, but he calls her Smelly Tramp, and her face, Debra's face, when she turned around to look at Ray, was fantastic. He'd taken it a little bit too far. Even with the cutesy voice, this one wasn't acceptable. And they're in bed the next scene. They're discussing it. There are, of course, things about this that Debra doesn't like, mostly just revolving around being fed up with his constant immaturity. And the conversation goes back to a couple of days ago when Ali had asked about babies, and Ray was too immature to address this. So he tells Debra, okay, I will give Ali the sex talk. He will not be immature about it. He'll go and talk to her. And to his credit, he does. And it was quite an interesting moment because he goes to obviously have this very grown-up conversation with Ali while she's sitting on her bed playing with her dolls. And just that dichotomy of the very adult conversation with the very childlike play was really interesting. Also, Ali's room is absolutely gorgeous. It's so stunning. And Ray, I think, handled the situation effectively. He tried. He was about to start the conversation. But Ali said that actually she's more interested in knowing why babies are born, why we're here, why God wants us here. And needless to say, Ray was very flustered. And at least with the sex talk, he had some of the knowledge to actually give her an answer, whereas obviously that's quite an open question. And again, to Ray's credit, he didn't initially bottle it. He did try and give her an answer. And ultimately, his answer was, and I quote, to ease heavenly congestion. In Ray's words, heaven is a little too busy. And he used Disneyland as an analogy, or Disney World, I can't remember which one he said, but one of the Disney parks he used as an analogy. It was fun, but it was a little too crowded. And I have to say, it's not a reason I've heard before. I've never heard that answer to the question of the meaning of life while we're here. And ultimately, Ray ends up bottling it again. And that's just as Marie, Frank, and Robert come over. We find out that Frank never had the sex talk with Ray and Robert. And then we have quite a chaotic scene, brilliantly executed, where there are a lot of heavy things being discussed. Different characters are having different conversations with each other. Robert is just having a breakdown, which I'll talk about in a moment, because I'm with you, Robert. I really agree with Robert's thoughts. And it's just such a messy scene, but in the best possible way. We have conversations about the sex talk. We have conversations about God. Marie is leafing through the Bible trying to find the answer to the meaning of life. And Robert is talking about space. And this is something I do think about. And it makes me feel so sick. Basically, we have Earth, we have the planets. Take them away, what have you got? Okay, there might be an answer to that. But what if you take that away? And then what if that didn't exist? And then whatever's left behind, well, what if that didn't exist? What if there was literally nothing? But I've thought about that for many, many years. Just every now and then I'll think about it, and it genuinely makes me feel ill. And I'm completely with Robert there. And who knows, maybe I started to think about that for the first time because of this show. Maybe way back when, many, many, many years ago, maybe Robert is the reason I started to think about that. I don't know. It's something I've thought about for decades, and I hate it. But it's just incredible. Take away the Earth. What have you got? Well, there are still planets. take away the planets, what have you got? Well, there are still other things. Okay, well, take away that. Can there be nothing? Is that physically possible? I mean, I don't like it. I don't like it, but Robert's breakdown, I was completely on board with it. I fully understood his thought process there. And then Ray decides to call Father Hubley, who is not available at that time, and then Robert starts to mention that fruit flies only live for a day, so what's their purpose? And then Debra brings up the whole smelly tramp again, and then Frank and Robert try to make Marie swear on the Bible. Frank wants her to swear that she didn't eat the cannolis that she's accusing Frank of eating. Robert wants her to swear on the Bible that Ray didn't get more presents than he did. It's an absolutely chaotic scene where basically everybody's conversation spills into the next, but nobody's really talking with each other, and they're shouting a lot of the time, and it's so messy, and it's so wonderful, and it's absolutely fabulous. And then we're near the end of the episode now, and Ray and Debra decide once and for all to go and talk to Ali to answer her questions as best as they can. There's no point in leaving her hanging. She's not in her room though, and she's playing with Michael and Geoffrey instead, and they're just having a lovely time and laughing and rolling around, and that was sweet to see. But the look on Ray and Debra's faces, it didn't need to be said, but I think it was very clear in that moment that some could argue that that's what life is about. Now, I don't know if I agree with that. I know it's a common thought that we exist to live life. Life is given to us so that we can enjoy it. I don't know, because what's the purpose of that? Surely there's a deeper meaning. I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'm saying that in that moment, I feel like it could be implied that one could argue the meaning of life is that to enjoy the sound of children laughing, to enjoy the people we love, having fun, to experience that. And that's a beautiful reason to live. I don't know if I personally agree that that's the reason for life, but I think it was a very, very nice moment. And then we're back in the bedroom for the final scene, and Ray calls Debra baloney bosoms, which is fabulous. And then he puts on a hat to give Debra, and I quote, a visit from Dopey. Ray's face, very, very, very funny. But Debra's face, as she really struggled to not laugh, absolutely fabulous. And I just thought it was a really fun way to end things. And it really helped to highlight as well that, yes, Ray can often be immature, but also there's something great about childlike innocence. And it was just a really fun way to end things. It's a solid episode. I think they did a really great job of tackling a really heavy topic without ever giving a solid answer. Again, maybe that penultimate scene there was suggesting that just enjoying spending time with loved ones is what it might be all about, but I think they took a really great approach with this, and the scene where everybody's having their own conversations and Robert's just panicking, and yeah, Robert was great. And yeah, I love the fact that this show gave me the encouragement to call my cat random names, because not consciously, I never consciously said today I'm going to do a Ray and call my cat ridiculous things, but it's a lot of fun, and it's just so almost stress relieving. Let's just say something ridiculous in a cutesy voice, and usually the cat stares at me as if I've lost my mind, but it's good fun, and you should try it. Maybe don't call somebody a smelly tramp. Baloney bosoms? Maybe that one's a safe one. Either way, great episode. Needless to say, it's a solid episode. I think they handled it really well. Talk to your daughter. Also encourages parents to maybe have certain talks with their children. I don't think it highlights how not to do it necessarily, but it also doesn't say exactly how to approach it either. So it might not be the most helpful, but certainly encouraging. Talk to your daughter is a solid episode of Everybody Loves Raymond.